What you're about to see in this video will give you a new appreciation for Starfield's dialogue system. It is mind-blowing. Every single contextual dialogue option, depending on your character build in Starfield, has now been found, and they're listed in a massive spreadsheet made by Reddit user MODUSforPOTUS. So let's go through it and see what weird and wonderful dialogue we can find. And some of these are crazy. I had no idea most of this was even in the game. But before we do, I will give you an example of a contextual dialogue option. For instance, here's what happens when you talk to someone after completing the Red Mile Gauntlets.
You know, I thought you looked familiar. I think I've seen you in the feed before. I can't believe I'm talking to another runner.
That was an example of a contextual dialogue option, something that only unlocks after you've done something specific in the game, not something that's unlocked by default. Now, it would be pretty hard to catalogue every unique bit of dialogue in Starfield, given there's 250,000 lines, not to mention all of the potential choices you can make in the game, from finishing certain quests to how you treat different NPCs to what background you've picked in the game. That's why this spreadsheet by MODUSforPOTUS lists what dialogue options unlock depending on what background you select for your character. In other words, here are all the unique dialogue options you can select when you choose your archetype in the character creation screen, whether that's a gangster, a bouncer, a professor, an explorer, or a scoundrel. The list goes on, and it is a fascinating list. Here's one from the gangster background. It says, "I'm not just some street rat, I'm connected. If you push me, my friends will push back." And if we scroll to the right, we can actually see what mission this piece of dialogue exists in, with the response from the NPC listed opposite. That NPC says, "I see, must have been some other loser that did this, you're free to go." And knowing what mission this dialogue exists in means we can go and find that mission and hear it for ourselves. And not only that, but it also shows us that dialogue does have an effect on the outcome of the game.
These dialogue options often change how you progress through missions, giving you alternate ways to proceed. For instance, here are 3 different ways you can complete the mission called Doctor's Orders. The first way is by using a unique line of dialogue specific to the cyberneticist background. The second is by manipulation, and the third way is by persuasion. And they all result in custom NPC responses. So here's what that sounds like.
That's the one thing I keep circling back to, and probably why I'm actually going to do this. You're right. She's the best surgeon I've ever known. If it wasn't for that malpractice crap she went through, I'm sure she'd still be legit. Yeah? Advice from the fleet? I doubt it. Easy. We're just talking, right? I think you've convinced me. Still, I can't believe I made a deal with the Crimson Fleet.
The existence of these dialogue options is specifically for the sake of immersion. You can roleplay as a specific character with contextual lines of dialogue that really make you feel like you are that character, regardless of how NPCs react. So you can roleplay as a deadly bounty hunter, or you could be a harmless chef who just loves food. And I also love this one from the bouncer character that says, "A piece of cake, I've been breaking up bar rules for years," which gives you the impression you're this grizzled bouncer character who's been around the circuit. The industrialist is an interesting one. They say stuff like, "Two captains of industry like ourselves working together, tell me more." So you can go around basically pretending you're a space version of J.D. Rockefeller. I also have a soft spot for the xenobiologist who has lines like, "You're obstructing vital xenobiological research. I don't expect you to understand, but this information is vitally important." Hey, I mean, if I was a xenobiologist, this is exactly what I would say. As you can see from the list, some backgrounds have tons of choices, but others hardly have any at all, so it's not that well balanced. Having access to this list is a great way to go about planning your next playthrough, like do you want to be a bounty hunter, do you want to be a pilgrim, or you can just be a chef. You can look beforehand and see what dialogue options they all have. Not all of them are equal and some are better than others, so if you pick the pilgrim or the Ronin background, you'll get literally 2 different dialogue options in the entire game, which is pretty awful. But if you pick a gangster, you will have access to dozens upon dozens of unique voice lines. Having different dialogue does go a long way to giving you agency and making you feel like you're part of the world. What continues to blow my mind about Starfield dialogue is that this is far from the only unique dialogue option in the game. For example, MODUSforPOTUS didn't even touch on what dialogue options unlock when you have different skills, like the starship engineering skill, for instance, or the medical skill. Loads more dialogue options open up here where you just spew out all these technical lines of jargon at people and see how they react. It's pretty fun. The creator of this list says they may expand it to include the dialogue that unlocks when you choose different perks, and also when you join different factions, and even when you do New Game Plus, because the dialogue also changes here, and it affects what dialogue you hear and also what dialogue you can choose to say. But they said that this was already a huge pain to do, considering that there are almost 300 unique lines here, and that would probably double or maybe even triple when you add in all the other factors like the ones I've just mentioned.
I don't doubt it. I'm sure you can figure out what's up without letting him cause a scene then. Don't feel like you need to take care of Hank. The equipment is priority. If it turns out he stole it, we can always let Sidonia Security handle it. I just hope it's not too late.
Another question though, how did they go about compiling this list? How did they get all the dialogue you see here? Well, it wasn't through playing the game naturally, because honestly, that would be a monumental task. Instead, they used the creation kits. This allowed them to look into the game files and see what dialogue is tied to what event in the game, and also how players go about unlocking it, be it what background they select or what trait they choose. I would love to see the creator fill out this list further and potentially even go about cataloguing every single piece of unique dialogue in the game, but then again, it's a massive task and they're not really getting paid, even though this is a great effort, and it just goes to show you how comprehensive the dialogue system is in Starfield. Not only is there more than double the amount of spoken words here over Fallout 4, but almost 4 times the amount as in Skyrim. And as we can see, there is a whole load of hidden contextual lines that no one has been able to map out completely. Anyway, that was a deep dive into Starfield's very underrated dialogue system. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. Your support is always very much appreciated, and for more Starfield guides, subscribe to the channel.